Hey, morning everyone. Welcome back. Let me just close this window quickly. Welcome back to our next session, our third session of our online conference. I'd like to introduce to you guys Carel Potgieter. Carel is one of our specialist speakers, and I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Again, like the previous sessions, thank you again for joining. I just need to get it right. On the right-hand side, if you're on a PC, you can do the chats and the polls. Just some information. If you guys are on a mobile phone, you will see at the bottom, if you swipe on the mobile phone, you'll see a little dot or a chat app, and you can switch between the video and the chat. I usually forget to tell people about how the cell phones work. So, Carel, thanks a lot. Welcome. And I'm going to hand it over to you. As you guys know, I'm in the background. I'm the MC. I'm also on the chat. If you guys, we turn the chat into private. So if you guys talk to us, then I will be myself and Carel will be the only guys seeing. So, Carel, I'm going to hand it over to you, and
Thank you, Eugene. Emotional intelligence is becoming really, really important, and we hear more and more about that. However, I found that there is a huge misconception about what emotional intelligence is. So from my side, thank you for attending. I'm very passionate about the topic. Hi, Lucky, Alta, Dario, thanks for attending. Thank you. Myself, you can see I'm still a very, very young Okie. I started my career in corporate, went through corporate, then from corporate into being an entrepreneur, and then from being an entrepreneur back to corporate, back to an entrepreneur, and back to corporate. And since 2008, I'm an entrepreneur again. I started looking at emotional intelligence because of the fact that while I was in corporate, I see a lot of smart guys, and all of them were really smart, but you know, they did the dumbest things ever, and they could not develop. I just could not understand that. So for that reason, I started getting involved in emotional intelligence. And big was my surprise when I found out that there were two guys, John Meyer and Peter Salovey. They actually, years ago, started developing EQ in psychology. And the reason for that is they actually had the same problem. People are very smart, high IQ, but they made bad decisions. And what was the reason? So let me go to the slides. So the question, what we're going to discuss today, what is emotional intelligence? For some reason, the slides don't want to change. Sorry, there it is. Good. Now, I belong to an organization called 6 Seconds, which is the biggest single emotional intelligence network in the world. And I'm a certified emotional intelligence assessor, practitioner, facilitator. And as you know, I'm a businessman. So I try to combine these things. And all of that is based on neuroscience. And wow, Eugene, thank you. You placed myself very well behind Dr. Tandu Sibanda from a neuroscience perspective. So Dr. Tandu, thank you. You did prepare the ground for me for my talk. Thank you so much for that. So 6 Seconds defined emotional intelligence as your ability to be smart about your emotions. So lots of people say, well, which is the most important, IQ or EQ? Well, none of the two. They work together hand in hand. And Dr. Sibanda explained to us in the previous session about behavior and how we behave because of certain patterns that develop during the brain. And that is what emotions are. So the first poll I want you to launch for me, Eugene, is Are you constantly aware of your emotions and how it influences you? So think about that. Are you constantly aware, as you sit there at the moment, how your emotions influence you? Wow, I see. We said 50-50 at the moment. Yes, absolutely. Some say yes, maybe. Some say I don't know. That's great. Thank you for that. Oh, yes, maybe is increasing. So let's look at the model. So if we look at the 6 seconds model about emotional intelligence, we say it stands on 3 legs. So as Dr. Lucky said, anything can stand on 3 legs. So our principle stands on 3 legs. The first is self-awareness. Know yourself. Do you know yourself well enough? And it's not a poll question at the moment. I'm just asking yourself, and you need to ask yourself, do you know yourself? Are you always self-aware? Do you know what you're feeling? The second is, if you know yourself well, do you choose yourself well? With other words, are you managing yourself? Are you managing those emotions? And thirdly is self-direction. Give yourself, what do I truly want to do? What do I truly want to do with these emotions? So if we look at the emotional intelligence side from the model, know yourself stands on 2 legs. Recognize the patterns, or enhance emotional literacy and recognize patterns. And I'll discuss that more in deep going forward. When you know yourself, when you understand those 2 areas, when you choose yourself, you look at consequential thinking. What is the consequences of what I'm going to do? How do I navigate emotions that comes up through my limbic system? How do I navigate it to my advantage and to the advantage of the situation? Next is, how am I motivated from internally to use the emotions to my benefit? And how optimistic am I? And that is a very, very important question. And how can I be more optimistic towards the world? And I think in this COVID scenario, I find myself regularly that I need to think about, well, is this permanent, COVID? But I'll discuss that as going forward. Next to the things within Give Yourself is empathy. And there's a huge difference between empathy and sympathy, and we'll talk about that. And then that noble goal. Now, if I can know where I stand around all 8 of these elements, then I really am EQ enabled. And so, by the way, I don't like the word EQ or emotional intelligence. I rather like the word emotional skills, because we can all develop our skills in terms of emotional intelligence. So with other words, we can develop our emotional skills. And there are different ways to do that. Now, if we look at emotional intelligence, the higher our emotional intelligence is, with other words, the better we can actually use these emotional skills to our advantage, it leads to very good outcomes. And we call it success. So we define success in the emotional world is that it is success on a personal side, on the left-hand side, and social side on the right-hand side. So on social side, we say emotional intelligence leads to great well-being, which is supported by work-life balance or balance in life with anything else, your health, the health of your body, your brain, your soul. In terms of quality of life, how satisfied are you with your life? And if you can manage your emotions, satisfaction will grow. And how happy are you with your achievements in life? And achievements in life can be directly linked through research to managing your skills. If we look at relationships on the right-hand side, that is how well you network, How well you network with your family, with friends, and then in your professional side. And then how well are you linked within your community? On the other side, the last area, effectiveness. How effective are you in making decisions? Because emotions influence decisions. And how effective are you in influencing yourself and other people? So the next poll is, I want to ask you the question, and if you guys can launch that for me, please, the poll. Do you know how your emotions contribute towards your success in life? And think carefully before you answer. Do you really know how your emotions contribute towards your success in life? Good. Wow. Wow. Fantastic. So that proves us that emotions have a huge influence on our life. And I've got 100% score here in terms of that. Wow, guys, fantastic. So let me dive into these 8 areas quickly. Enhance emotional literacy. So what we say, your body temperature differs, and you have different feelings caused different feelings in the body caused by different emotions. So anger, for example, you will feel hot above the waist and sometimes into the hands, where if you look at some of the other emotions like pride, etc., you can see the different areas of temperature within the body. So the big thing here is to be able to recognize an emotion. An emotion is pure data, and it's all about, do you be able to recognize your emotions? And the principle is here, if you find that there's a specific emotion, stop, name the emotion, and when you name an emotion, you can tame it. Now you can start work with the emotion. Lots of times, we actually don't stop. And an emotion can lead us to the next principle of moving us into a specific pattern. So, certain emotions can click off patterns. So in the brain, as Dr. Sibana said, there are cells that fire together, wires that fires together, create a pattern. And that then becomes, and sometimes even impulsive behavior. So an emotion can lead to an impulsive behavior. You sometimes hear that people say, well, when I get stressed, I start eating. And that is typically a pattern that certain people have. So if you can identify the emotion, you can then stop that pattern. And that happens through self-talk. And what we don't want to do is go on autopilot. Because sometimes we just go on autopilot. And that's when an emotion can become dangerous to us. Now that we know our emotions, the next thing is, what is the potential consequence of what we are doing with this emotion? So it's the principle of cause and effect. So what choices do we make based on the emotions that's driving us? So from myself, that was one of the areas I identified in 2008 that I had to do a lot of development on. Certain emotions triggered me without knowing that. And then I made quick decisions, which eventually led to the principle that I made the wrong decision. And in business, being an entrepreneur, that did cost me a lot. So certain emotions caused me to make wrong decisions because purely that I didn't think about that consequence of that decision. So that is the third thing then that is very, very important to us. Then, now that we know the emotion, we know what the potential consequence is, now it enables us to navigate the emotions. Because of the fact that emotions can bring us into an emotional hijack, we don't want, and part of the limbic system is the amygdala, And lots of you probably have heard that people say, well, I went into an amygdala hijack. And that's what we don't want to happen. Now, if we could go through the process I've just described, then we can actually stop and not be hijacked. So a big concern is studies that was done, and is that from 2011 to 2017, globally, in 200,000 participants, with others across the world, showed that people are not navigating their emotions as they're supposed to be. There is a decline. And that is a concern. The next thing is, how am I being motivated? Am I motivated internally to use everything to drive me, to use everything to my benefit, to use to the benefit of the society? With other words, do I have strong enough values, my passion, behavior? Am I driven by that? Or am I allowing myself to be at the mercy of others? And that's the dangerous side. When I start allowing myself to be motivated by external parties only. And that is where there's a well-known research done by Daniel Pink, where he looks at reward and motivation. So if we are only driven, our emotions drives us toward waiting for external rewards before we do something, the benefit of other people, that's when we get into a dangerous situation of not utilizing the emotions to our benefit. And sorry for the click sound, my external mouse just didn't want to operate. The next thing is exercise optimism. Now, there's a big difference between realism and optimism. And unfortunately, I found that a lot of people in the theory of optimism is going wanky. They just say, well, you know what, everything will be good. Everything is good. Nothing is bad. That is not what we mean by optimism. We say that in a situation like the situation we find ourselves today in, there will be possibilities. And those emotions, if we can utilize that with internal optimism, we can look at what is the possibilities. And also, anything that happens that's bad to us is not permanent. If we can go past the view of seeing that as permanent to seeing that as temporary, and what can we do to utilize this to our benefit going forward, that's what optimism is. And in other words, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is the in for me? Not only that, but what is the in for them, for other people as well? And if we can balance those two, and that's when we start looking optimistic towards the world and can overcome any challenge. And this emotion can then be channeled correctly to the benefit of not only me, but also to the benefit of other people. Okay, now we know ourselves. We've chosen ourselves, what we do with that emotion. Next thing is, why do we do what we do? And that is bringing us to the 7th principle of increased empathy. And that has also been found in research, that a lot of empathy, people are losing a lot of empathy sometimes going forward. Question is, what is empathy? And there are two very major types of empathy. That is empathy, which is cognitive, which comes from the prefrontal cortex. You think about it, you think about being empathetic, versus emotional empathy, where it's natural and it happens that you can put yourselves in the shoes of another person. And that's where the principle of mirror neurons comes in. So when we get into a discussion with a person, our brains do connect. And we call it in neuroscience that we connect through mirror neurons. So if we can connect well enough with another person, we can place us in the shoe of that person and start understanding what that person is going through. And that is what we say, now we can understand why a person is doing what they're doing. And it's not about sympathy. So, oh, sorry to hear that. Hope you're doing well, and walk away. This is, wow, we understand that you have a problem. How can we assist? So if we can use that in our emotions, and also now, remember, it's not our own emotions only, it's also the emotions of other people. If we can really identify emotions in other people, we can then empathize with them and help them overcome the difficult situation they are in. Point number 8, the last one, but probably the most important. And there are a lot of books that was written around that topic. And also, I do provide some coaching sessions focused specifically also on this area. And that is pursue your noble goal. So, out of 27,000 global leaders, there was research done, and only 50% of them could identify why they do what they do. What's that noble goal? So a lot of times people see a noble goal, and especially the younger people see a noble goal as being able to buy a house, buying that Ferrari. Well, bad news for anybody thinking like that. That is not a noble goal. I like to define the noble goal as to say, the day you are not there anymore, and people have to talk about you, what would they remember you about? And that is what your noble goal is. Michael Norton says, happiness in terms of the noble goal is giving. Daniel Pink again, that sentence, I've asked you, do you know what your sentence are? Do you know what people would like you to be remembered by? And the question of a noble goal is something that you develop day by day by day. And it's not that you one day will get there. It's that every day you need to ask yourself the question, was I better today than yesterday? And that's how you drive towards that noble goal. The question I want to ask you, and I see a lot of people that said they do understand, but do you really want to understand? Do you have a drive that you want to understand your EQ better from a scientific perspective? Is there a need by anybody? Do you think society needs that to understand their EQ better? If we can launch that poll, please. Gina, are you there? Good, thank you. I'm seeing it coming through. 100% say they want to understand their EQ better. So the question I want there is how do you start knowing your EQ better? And I want to take you through this quickly. So in 6 seconds, we run an assessment where it's based on 74 questions, which is researched, where you can actually go and do the assessment on the web, which will then show you exactly where you position yourselves in terms of your EQ. Now you can see, and sorry, I don't expect you to read on that report. It is just to be able to see the layout of the report. Is we measure in terms of that 3 areas: choose yourself, give yourself, and know yourself. So if you want to do such an assessment, you can do that, and this report will show you where you're the strongest. So what we believe in is that we don't want to identify weaknesses. We don't believe in that. We want to show you where your strengths are in terms of your emotional skills. So firstly, you will see on the top, you will see there are 3 very specific areas there. On the top, this specific person is choose yourself, and it's just a name which we've just chosen. Choose yourself, give yourself, know yourself. Choose yourself, this person is the biggest strength. Give yourself second strength, and third is know yourself. So what we then identify is which areas in here, and you can see that is based also on artificial intelligence we utilize. Give the person advice what they can do to utilize their strengths to really grow their emotions and their emotional skills. So the focus is, how do I utilize my strengths and then use that strengths in developing other areas, not addressing weaknesses, but developing other areas, so that you can have a balanced portfolio of the way that you have emotional skills to manage at least those 8 areas which I've discussed, which then will lead to your life success. And there will be a summary in that report in terms of where do you see yourself to be the most successful, and where do you see yourself in the areas that you want to improve, and how can you use your emotional skills to improve on that specific area of your life. So anybody who would like to do this, we do offer this assessment for free. There's no obligation. It's completely free. And what we do then is we will not mail you this report or send the report to you. You will not just receive the report. But with this, I provide you with a 20-minute debrief where I will personally, via Skype or via any other platform, Zoom, debrief you in terms of exactly how you must interpret the report, and then what can be the areas, and set 1 or 2 goals which you will then want to utilize some of your strengths to really develop some other areas in terms of your emotional skills. So that is bringing me myself to the end. I've prepared for 30 minutes. I see I'm sitting at 27 minutes. So from my perspective, thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm really passionate about this. I've really seen the difference that is making in people's life. I'm coaching people in emotional intelligence since 2008, and I've seen a lot of people improving, and I can talk about myself as well. So anybody who wants to really talk to me, anybody who wants to do the assessment and get the debrief, my email is on the screen. And Eugene, I think you guys will also send that through. Yes. So from my side, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it. So let me just see whether there was any questions asked, which I can answer.
While you look at the question,
Dario, okay. I like to think that if people understood their thoughts, yes, absolutely. I agree with you. You are 100% right. Thank you for that comment. Bjorn, thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to really give you my views. And guys, all I've done today is really, I promise you, I scratched the surface. On this specific thing, I run a 6-week program, which I call the EQ Gym, where we all like to go to gym to strengthen our muscles.
That's true.
And here, the gym I offer is to have an EQ Gym to strengthen your emotions, because if you can balance your emotions with your IQ, and you know what, I've never met in business, corporate world, entrepreneurship, that a person haven't had the logical mind, haven't got the IQ. All of them were brilliant. But boy, oh boy, lots of people failed on the EQ side. So thank you again.
That message is very good.
Over to you, Eugene.
Cool. So, guys, thanks. That brings us to the end of this morning session. Carel, thank you very much for your insights on EQ. We'll take a break. So we've got a break until 1 o'clock. And then I just want to introduce you guys to the speaker at 1 o'clock. His name is Dean Botha. Dean is the head founder of Pride Factor,
Guys, it doesn't look like
young
Dean is coming
surfer.
back from my side. I can't see him.
He's a young
But
surfer.
please attend the session, the next session.
Okay,
It was a pleasure talking to you.
There's a bit of a...
The next session, if I remember, is starting at 12. So have a
Okay.
go and get yourself a nice coffee.
Cool. I think Carel can't hear me. But yeah, so Dean was voted one of the most 100 influential youths in 2019. So we'll send the link out for everyone. Have a coffee break, have a lunch. We'll see you back at 1 o'clock. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.